You're listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Web Trends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI on their digital properties. Web Trends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed-price contract with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the marketing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. One question I've always wrestled with over the years of interviewing potential employees is, does experience trump qualifications? So today I'm in discussion with someone who has built a career in data and analytics so far without a maths degree or a computer science degree or in fact any tertiary education. Stacey Cooper now runs her own analytics business, Sharper Digital, after 10 years in working for a number of large corporates and agencies. So we'll discuss how she started and how she's managed to build a great reputation amongst both her colleagues and clients. So Stacey, what was your first role?
So my first role in digital analytics was a part-time role that was somewhat an apprenticeship, I guess, whilst working at PlusNet. So I applied for that role with really next to no experience whilst working in the call centre. I had some previous experience in data analysis, but it was more like MI reporting and business reporting. So I applied for this role because it just sounded really interesting. It related to some of my experience in that it was analytical, but I really liked the idea of learning about digital experiences and things like that. I'm very techie, so I just loved the sound of the job.
I was just wondering, did you do anything like maths or computer science at school, or was it just straight off the bat you decided this was a thing for you?
It was kind of straight off the bat, really. I don't have any higher education. I've got very, A-levels not worth mentioning, to tell you the truth. But in high school and primary school, I was definitely into maths, and I always have been. I think I've got that kind of mind for it. I'm definitely a numerate, not illiterate. So I've always kind of hankered towards those kind of skills, and I'm very tech savvy as well. So in one of my earlier jobs at the post office, I just naturally noticed I have some skills in spreadsheets and working really swiftly with computers. And I think just naturally I've gravitated towards this role because of my own interests and natural skill set, I guess.
I think the working at the post office around the time of the Horizon, I won't say scandal, but the kind of Horizon situation at that point must have been quite interesting. Or were you completely oblivious to any of that was going on?
I was just before that. So it was more of my awareness of that issue was more of, oh, this is a bit irritating and something seems a bit off and it's an inconvenience. But at that time, it didn't come to light, all of the problems and the issues with it.
You kind of, after being at the post office, I think you were there for a couple of years looking at your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You went to Australia. Now that's quite a move. Either you absolutely hated it working in the post office and decided to go somewhere completely different, or you had a yearning to travel. Which was it?
Yearning to travel. I did really enjoy my job at the post office, and I worked with some really great people there. I went to Australia the first time when I was 19 and absolutely loved it. And then my now husband and I decided we wanted to give it a go together. So we spent a year out there. And I can't believe it, actually. It's 10 years like this week that we went. And
congratulations.
That's wild to me. It feels like it was only yesterday. And we just had really itchy feet, love traveling, still love traveling, love going on holidays. But I really enjoyed my job at the post office, but it was just traveling was calling me.
But you did a couple of jobs while you were there, didn't you? Working for a national real estate company and customer service representative. Was that just to pay the bills, or did you think that you might want to stay?
We did want to stay, but to be honest, I was quite open to trying anything at that time. I, like I say, enjoyed my job at the post office, but I hadn't decided on a career as such. I was a bit of I don't know, a bit of a free soul in that I just was happy to try anything really. I really enjoyed the real estate job. That gave me some interesting skills in dealing with people and dealing with difficult people as well. Yeah, definitely very quickly built a lot of people and social skills up from that role. And then the customer service representative role, again, that was quite unique because that was working for a company helping charities to make sure that people were committed to their monthly donations, but also making sure that they made that decision. They weren't coerced into signing up for the charities and things like that. So again, that was a really interesting role and a brilliant company as well in Australia. And again, I really enjoyed that job, really enjoyed the people that I worked with. But unfortunately, we couldn't make it at the time to stay in Australia. So we ended up coming home.
And that's where you joined PlusNet, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So when I got back, I was just like, I just need a job. You know, I'm not picky. I just need a job. I've always liked the brand of PlusNet. As you can tell, I'm a Yorkshire lass. So it was just PlusNet sounded like a great place to work. It had great reviews. It was still pretty, not small, but as in the employee count wasn't super high at the time. So I was like, oh, well, do you know what? This sounds like a nice place to work and it's just a job that pays the bills. Well, I ended up really enjoying working at PlusNet. I was really passionate about working there as well. Worked with a lot of people that really supported me in my career path from all different departments, to tell you the truth. And well, yeah, I was there for I think like 4.5 years. So I think that speaks for itself. I really owe a lot to PlusNet in my career journey, and that they, as I say, I got a lot of support from management, peers in my career growth. But to be honest, I was just always out seeking whatever was next. If you gave me a goal, if you gave me a target, I was working on it. I was really focused and tenacious in ensuring that I was always meeting those requirements and always open to learn. I remember very, very early, as I say, when I first kind of applied for that job and I was doing the part-time like apprenticeship, I'd be sat in these meetings with other like marketing managers and digital seniors and things like that, and I'm like, oh, little old me, what am I doing here? It was like they were speaking a different language. I was like, above the line, below the line, KPI, DCR, saying all these words, all these acronyms, and I was like, I don't know what these people are on about. So I wrote down in the back of my notepad. I always had a notepad with me. It was glued to me. I wrote down all of these terms and things in the back of my notepad, and then I would go home and research them. So I didn't quite have the confidence to speak up and say, well, what does that mean? I think there is an appropriate place to, of course, do that. And I felt very comfortable afterwards to say to my manager, what on earth does that even mean? But rather than feeling lost, I kind of just took it upon myself to go and do the work and research it outside of work time. But I was just very driven at that time.
So at the time you were working in technical support, and this
Yes.
digital analytics apprentice, I think as you describe it,
Yeah.
was that in addition to your technical support role, or was
Yeah.
it kind of you were taken off and spend a couple of hours a week doing this, or how did it work?
Yeah, it was a little bit half and half. So I might work a shift in the contact centre, and then I would disappear off to the digital team to do half a day with them. So at first it was just a couple of hours, and then I think everyone realised, well, that was a bit of, I wasn't getting much from it. nor was the digital team. They weren't getting the most out of me because I'd start a job and I couldn't finish it. So eventually it grew to more and more. So, there was a couple of odd occasions where I would work like a normal, I don't know, maybe 9 till 1 with the digital team. I'd go off and have my dinner, and then I'd be in the call centre till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was few and far between, but every now and then I did that because I was like I say, I just wanted to learn. I was just so hungry to learn and found it so interesting.
So was that something that you kind of applied for, or was it something that morphed into an interest in digital and you kind of thought this is where things are going, so I'll put my hand up and say, is there anything that I can do to be able to get into that world?
Well, it's funny. So I'd only been, I think, at PlusNet about a month. I was fresh out of my training, and I saw the role come up internally for a digital analyst. I was like, oh, that sounds so interesting. That sounds right up my street. Well, as I wasn't supposed to apply for any internal roles whilst in my 3-month probation, but I did it anyway. I thought, well, do you know what? Screw it. At least it's an internal role, right, and not something external. So yeah, that came kind of part of my story, really, that I just did it anyway. And look where I am now. So had I not just decided to go, do you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to apply for it. I might not be in this career. I might not be where I am now just because of that small decision I made. And like I say, it was really a bit audacious of me because I didn't have the experience. But I just thought it sounded so interesting that I was lucky enough and privileged enough that that the manager saw, I guess, potential in me and saw that interest, that they decided to somewhat create this apprenticeship mentorship thing that had not been done at PlusNet before. That I think they started to roll out more frequently after that as well.
So how did you gain your skills, your experience? Did you have mentors, for instance, that would help you along the way, or were you busy reading books and reading web pages at night to learn more?
Yeah, a combination of, really. I've had mentors all throughout my career, and I owe a lot of what I've achieved from them. I've always been under someone's wing. I still am now. I owe a lot to that, but I learn practically, so I like someone to show me how to do something. I'll replicate it or figure it out myself. Give me a task to do, I'll problem solve, I'll break it and then I'll fix it, and I'll probably break it again and then I'll fix it. I do less of that now, thankfully. I'm a bit better at not doing the breaking stuff now.
Well, if you don't make mistakes, you're never going to learn.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, I made plenty of them kind of early in my career, and I think a lot of people do. But yeah, I would say I learned a lot from my mentors and just applying myself and problem solving, really. I learned that I don't work well in a classroom environment, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to learn. I'm not keen to learn. It's just if someone stood talking at me for a long time, my brain just doesn't work in that way. So I think I just really honed in on my method of how I personally learn and just rinsed and repeated that, really.
So you were there in total, I think, PlusNet and BT for just over 5 years.
Yes.
That's quite a chunk of time to be in one kind of organisation. But then you made the move to work for an agency. So kind of moving into the role of being client side to being agency side. Was that a difficult decision to make?
Yeah, it was. It was very scary. I think other people will appreciate this where they have been at a company for a long time and learned all their skills at a company, that they fear that moving somewhere else, it's like, oh, is everything I've learned just maybe wrong, or not wrong, but does it only apply in this situation? Is it actually transferable? So that was a bit of a scary leap for me to go from in-house corporate to big agency. But something I absolutely thrived in, and I loved it there. I was really lucky that, again, I was trusted, I suppose, in that I'd had no agency experience. I'd only ever really worked in this corporate organisation. And again, it was Stephen Kenwright and Jerry White that interviewed me there. And again, they just trusted me in that, I'm willing to learn, and I was ready for a new challenge. I was ready for a change of scenery. Bearing in mind, we'd been working from home for ages by that point as well. So I was just really ready for that change in dynamic, I guess, and to learn in different ways. So I felt fairly confident by that point in my skills working in digital analytics and optimization. By all means, still plenty to learn, but I wanted to learn a different format, and it was very fast paced. I loved the exposure was what I was looking for. Exposure to different industries, different ways of working, the agency model. And like I say, I kind of really thrived in that environment. It was brilliant.
One of the things about working in an agency is that you have your work spread across different clients. Mm-hmm. Was that something you could adapt to? Because obviously being in PlusNet BT, there's one client and you work for that client exclusively. But is there an element of juggling balls around the way in an agency side?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But that part wasn't what scared me, because, to be honest, I was always working on a lot of projects whilst at PlusNet and BT. I was always spread quite thinly there, just because we had so much to do in the digital space, in that we had many optimizations we could make. It was a large infrastructure that required a lot of analytics implementation and things like that. So I was already quite prepared for that part of agency life, and that helped my transition a little bit, because I just applied what I'd learned about prioritization and spinning many plates, I guess, and just applied that to agency life. What I wasn't expecting about working at an agency was the more practical side of things, about negotiating contracts, pitching, and then suddenly I had to, I guess, sell my skills, which it was new to me. That was the bit that I found challenging and scary. But after a while, I got used to it, in the fact that I realised I don't need to sell it in the standard definition of selling, because I'm really confident that I know that if I'm talking to a client and I know they need something, I don't need to sell it. I'm so confident in that it's not selling to me. But that took me a little bit of getting used to, I'll be honest.
I think people talk about confidence in different ways. I mean, one of the things that I've always done in my career is focused on those people who are confident but are backed with knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
If you've got knowledge and experience but no confidence, you won't succeed.
Yeah.
And if you're missing any one of those things, you can carve out a career, say as an analyst or something like that, where you don't necessarily need huge amounts of confidence. But when you're actually talking to a client about the outcome of things, you have to have some level of confidence into the so what kind of question that you're going to be asked. So yes, it's been an uplift of 15%. So what does that mean for the business? And that's where the confidence comes in, I think, which is quite good. I noticed the terminology changed around 2001 from being an optimization lead to having the word CRO, or conversion rate optimization, at that point. Was that a conscious thing that you thought when you moved into that agency, that they were looking at conversion rate optimization as opposed to just digital optimization, which is making the thing work a little bit better or look a bit nicer?
Yeah, so we still did CRO at PlusNet and BT. It was, I guess, in its infancy a little bit, but then it grew rapidly whilst I was there, because of one of my colleagues that did an amazing job at it. But yes, it was definitely a driver for me, that the role Rise at Seven were advertising was analytics and specifically CRO, because I'd only actually done only been a very small part of it, I guess, at BT and PlusNet. That was mainly my colleague's job. So it was really interesting to me to get my teeth into, I guess, the full broad spectrum of analytics, where it's the implementation, the analysis, and CRO. So yeah, that was definitely a driver for me.
When you made that move from PlusNet BT into working for an agency, one of the questions that I would be asked of this interview is that, were you asked for any qualifications around that point, or did they just say, actually, your experience speaks volumes? Because you obviously were successful in your move to Rise at Seven, but I'm just questioning whether that lack of, I suppose, qualifications was a barrier, or did it never come up?
I don't recall it coming up in the conversation. I remember the interview being, I don't want to say informal because that kind of takes away the credibility of it, but I felt, it just felt comfortable. It felt like it was just a chat about experience, about how would you handle this, and Jerry gave me a couple of scenarios of, oh, I've got this hypothetical client with this hypothetical issue. How would you resolve that? Explain to me, how would you work through that? So a lot of the interview was competency based, I guess. And I think they were getting more, I got the impression anyway, that they wanted to get more of a feel for me in exactly what you said, actually, about that confidence and confidence in myself, of my skills. So yeah, it wasn't, I don't recall it coming up. They might have asked me and I might have said, just been honest with them, so well, I don't have anything, to tell you the truth. But I don't recall us having a long discussion about it anyway.
So what was it? You decided some time ago, probably a year and a half ago, that you would go your own way to a degree and
Yes.
become freelance. So what was that? Was that something that said, okay, I'm like doing this, but I think I can earn more money doing it myself, or you've got clients which didn't want the full package? How did that transition work?
It was, I think this is one of those stages in my career or life, I guess, where it was a bit of a combination of luck and opportunity. So at that time was the beginning of the transition of Universal Analytics to GA4. So for those that don't know or aren't familiar, so it's the older platform of Google Analytics was sunsetting, and everyone needed to migrate to GA4. Now, unbeknown to me, I'd actually been working on GA4 in its infancy whilst I was at PlusNet.
Right.
It was called App and Web then, and Firebase Analytics, and we were working on an app then, and I was the lead on ensuring it was measurable. So as I say, unbeknownst to me, I'd kind of matured with the tool without realising. And then it was announced that they were sunsetting Universal Analytics, and this now GA4, everyone was going to have to move to. So this is what I mean about the luck and opportunity. I was like, oh.
Right place, right time.
Right place, right time, 100%. I was like, oh, I actually already know how to use this. I already know how to implement it. I understand the data model, because the data model was different. So naturally, people started to approach me then of, oh, I've heard that you know how to use GA4, you know how to implement it. I've got this friend that works at such and such company that needs help. Do you think you could do it? And more of those questions started coming in, and more people were approaching me, other freelancers, and that kind of thing. And I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna say yes to all of this work and be
That's that
completely,
confidence coming out again.
yeah, and just be completely snowed under and uh, uh, commit far too much to what I can do. But yeah, another learning curve for me. So it wasn't like it was a. I've always wanted to work for myself. I've always known that about myself. Not necessarily. I've never thought I want to run a company or be a boss or that kind of thing. But I've always had this internal desire that I would love to work for myself and be the master of my own destiny and my own schedule. So I've just felt like, okay, now is the time. And I was really lucky that my friend Jill, who I believe has possibly been on the podcast before, or done some webinars with you, Jill Quick. So I've worked really closely with Jill Quick since becoming a freelancer, and I've been under her wing. And as I said, I still have mentors now. She's my friend and mentor, and I'm very lucky to have her. And she's really helped me in guiding me through this path of being a freelancer, because it was all very, again, something else that was very new to me, and all the logistics of being a freelancer as well, the boring side of it. You think that it's all fun. I get to go to yoga when I want, and go walk my dog when I want, and just work random hours of the day. And then you go, oh, hang on a minute, taxes. I have to pay taxes now. I have to do that. So that presented its own challenges, I guess.
As I'm bringing this to a close, the one question I think everybody would be on everybody's lips, especially those that are thinking about their first move into digital. Do you believe that others can follow in your footsteps, or do you believe that those starting out in this digital world need to compete on qualifications? Because I think things have changed over the last 5 years. That it used to be that everybody had to have a degree. Now everybody has to have a master's. My son's just completed his second master's.
Wow, amazing.
And you kind of think, well, he doesn't want to be a perpetual student, but he wants to rise above the rest to be able to make sure that he's doing that. Do you think qualifications now have become much more important, or do you think your route is still open to people?
I suppose it depends. Everyone hates that answer, don't they?
Especially on podcasts.
Especially, yes. I think what it depends on is who you are as a person, and what I mentioned earlier about your own method of learning. I think you bring your own credibility to the role, be that academic, and your commitment to studies and your method of learning, or your credibility in your eagerness to learn, even not in an academic setting, and showing up every day. So I'd say the skills that's across both of them are what's important, in that, well, you still want to learn, you still want to grow, you're still keen to progress and demonstrate those skills. Is just one, the academic route, and the other is in practically doing it on the job. So I think you choose depending on your own style of learning. And when you go into an employer, make sure that you're being really clear on, well, here's my credibility and here's my confidence in my abilities, because I'm committed to it. So yeah, everyone hates the "it depends" response, but I think, yeah.
I think you've been lucky in the fact that you've had so many good mentors along the way, which have kind of you've potentially used as a sounding board to be able to move, and you've got the confidence to feel as though that it's the right time to move on or do something, and you've probably got the confidence to make decisions which are, I suppose, bold in a way, to be able to make moves along the way. So my view is still confidence trumps a lot of different things. Qualifications back that up if you need that backing up, but experience and qualifications and confidence are the great recipe, and I think you've managed to do very, very well so far. And obviously, I'll keep an eye out on your career as things progress. But I think it's definitely, if you've got the confidence and you're willing to learn, I think that's a good phrase. You should be able to get on in life doing the thing that you want to do. But without confidence, I think that's going to be a challenge. And probably your best route is to follow the education route and get as many qualifications as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I think nowadays, it's hilarious. It wasn't that long ago, but nowadays I feel like there are more routes to internships and apprenticeships now than there was initially when I was starting the marketing world anyway. So I think if my career path is something that interests someone, I would have a look at seeking those out. They won't find you, you'll have to find them. But I think there's clearer pathways in my route now. I've just kind of bumbled along and figured it out along the way. But I think it's a bit more of a recognised route in a career now anyway.
So Stacey, thank you very much for your insight into your experience thus far. It has been fascinating. I think there's definitely the opportunity for people to go one of two ways with regard to this, getting that confidence along the way, getting qualifications if you think that's needed. But thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing more about how your career progresses in the coming years.
No, thank you for having me.